Hey everyone, and welcome to the 8-Figure Agent Podcast. My name is Jed Larsen, and I'm joined by my co-host Matt Walker, CEO of Swivel, the world's most flexible financial services CRM. Our mission is to build community, a community where we can empower each other to achieve remarkable success in the financial sector. Join Matt and me every week as we will motivate you to reach new heights in your career and unlock your full potential. Reaching your next level of success starts now. Hi, and welcome back to the 8-Figure Agent. I'm Jed Larsen alongside Matt Walker, and today we have a special guest. I feel like we say we have a special guest on every episode, but today we have an extra special guest that we've had some serious personal relationships with. His name is Jed Morley, and I'm going to do the obligatory thing where you read something first about, because his pedigree precedes himself, and then you're going to have the opportunity to jump in and actually meet Jed. Jed Morley is the founder and CEO of Backstory Branding. He's a strategist, and really, Backstory Branding is where he works with leaders to build brands that scale by clarifying their purpose, articulating their value, and codifying their culture. Jed's message market fit process guides growing companies through the iterative process of tuning their messages to resonate with customers. Before starting Backstory Branding, he worked in marketing and business development for startups and enterprise businesses. In his free time, Jed enjoys spending time with his family, the arts, outdoor adventures, and Swedish genealogy. He earned a BA in design from Brigham Young University and an MS in integrated marketing communications from Northwest University. Jed, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, before we get started, we have one question. This is a no judgment zone except for the next couple minutes. We're going to ask you one question. What is your favorite cereal?
Muesli.
Oh, muesli. I've never heard of this brand. So this is because you're a branding specialist. How you pick the one we don't know?
Matt knows what muesli is, having lived in the UK, I would imagine.
I don't actually.
You don't?
No.
No, it's like an all-natural grains cereal. It's really popular, at least in Germany. I thought it was all over Europe, but I've really fallen in love with it. Whenever I can have muesli, it's my go-to. It's one of those things where it's a little too good, a little too much of a good thing sometimes, but I love it. It's really natural and it gives you good energy. So muesli is my go-to when it comes to cereal.
We have never had that one said on the show. So I love that. Put that checkbox down there. Jed, talk to us a little bit. How did you get here? Tell us your story. How did you arrive at this branding specialist, not only a branding specialist, but at the top of your class in your industry?
That's nice of you to say. It's been a process where I've pursued a question and answer, and it's taken me a long time to understand what the meaning is of my quest. And so I like to say it started with a mistake I made in 8th grade PE. I ran too fast during a PE class. And our PE instructor, Mike Thacker, happened to be the track coach in our junior high and middle school. And he tapped me to run the 800 meters. So instead of playing kickball and soccer and softball with my classmates, I ended up running laps and conditioning during PE the rest of the year. I went on to run the 800 for the next 5 years and broke the 2-minute mark, which was my personal goal. I ran a sub-2 half mile. And the process of learning to overcome the fear of the discomfort and pain around the final turn when the lactic acid is hitting you hard and your body wants to seize up and you want to quit and submit to the pain, you have a decision to make. You have a moment of truth. Am I going to succumb or am I going to overcome? And Nike was the ethos of running for me back in those days. I still have my racing flats because they inspire me and remind me of a time when I feel like I achieved something great. I ran that sub-2 time with the help of a coach who was there for me after every distance run, who pushed us in our training regimens. And there was a sense of camaraderie on the team, but the mindset that it took to override that pain, that temptation to do less than my best, was inspired by Nike. And so when it came time to choose a major in college, I attended Brigham Young University undergrad. I chose design thinking that logos were brands and that Nike's logo was the reason why I was inspired to run my best. And over the last 20 years, I've figured out that there's a lot more to branding than logos. Brands ultimately are the perception someone has of a person, place, thing, or idea. And the reason I connect with Nike is because they believe in achieving your personal best. Just do it is the verbal expression of their brand purpose, which is to provide innovation and inspiration for every athlete in the world. And Bill Bowerman, a co-founder of Nike, as a lot of you know, in partnership with Phil Knight, if you have a body, you're an athlete, is what Bowerman used to say. He was the men's track coach at University of Oregon in Eugene. Everybody's read Shoe Dog. I really like Bill Bowerman and the Men of Oregon. I think it's an equally good book. It chronicles the inception of Nike's product innovation engine, which was led by Bill Bowerman and his passion for helping his athletes achieve their best. It wasn't limited just to workouts or technique on the track. He innovated products. He was constantly designing new shoes, and as materials changed, it went from cinders to rubberized tracks. Bowerman was right there at the forefront of technology. He actually popularized jogging in America. He brought it here. He wrote a book about it. And there are some pictures from the late 50s and early 60s of him running with his wife and some friends. And it's interesting to note that there's really nothing special about what they're wearing because there wasn't any gear yet for running. It wasn't really a thing. And he was trying to get people more active and to promote exercise. And it inevitably eventually built a market for Nike's products. But he was a very purpose-driven guy. We build purpose-driven brands. And I'm happy to be able to help companies like yours clarify and articulate their purpose and communicate and articulate the value of the promise that comes out of that purpose so that you can connect with the right customers and create value for them.
Yeah, if you can't tell already, Jed's a professional. He knows what he's talking about. It's amazing. And so Jed, let's do this. Matt, can we back up a little bit? And so I want to connect the dots from this early inception, this motivation, inspiration to where you are today. But Jed is somebody that we've actually hired at Swivel as a consultant prior to, and he continues to work with us in innovating our strategies and our architecture and our brand, et cetera. But Matt, will you share the story? And Jed, you can interrupt Matt whenever you want about this story of the first meeting that the two of you had, and let's share that dialogue.
Yeah, so one of our investors, Scott Peterson, has had a lot of experience with SaaS companies, and he said, he sat down through one of our meetings, we explained everything that we're doing, and he kind of looked over at me at the very end. He's like, love what you're doing, love the concept, but you got it all wrong. And, you know, come on, we're halfway through this. We've 3 years of building this thing out. We're feeling pretty good about what we're doing. We're kind of taking it to market, getting feedback. We're feeling like we're doing a good job. And to have someone with, you know, his pedigree, Scott Peterson's pedigree and understanding of, you know, businesses and especially SaaS companies, be like, you got it all wrong, is a kick in the gut. It's not fun. He's like, I need you to talk to this guy. And I mean, if it wasn't Scott Peterson to say, I need you to talk to this guy, I probably wouldn't have ever called, because he already said I got it all wrong. And I don't know if I wanted to believe anyone because I felt like I had it all right. I was like, all right, take a little bit of humble pie here. You know, let's call Jed. And we start talking. And Jed's like, tell me what you're doing. And I explained the name of the company, and it wasn't Swivel at the time, by the way. We called ourselves Advisor Branch for those who know or don't know. And I explained what our intent was to make a software that helps advisors become successful. And I kept asking questions. And I was sitting there kind of going like, I know where this is going. It's going to be this giant, like, well, you got it all wrong, so let me come consult with you and show you how to do it all right. And sure enough, that's exactly where it went. And I was like, just kind of getting like more cringy on the whole thing, because he's like, now I got a second person telling me I'm wrong. And I'm trying to handle it well. I'm trying to handle it with a little bit of grace, but I'm like, I've got Scott Peterson who, knows SaaS, but he doesn't know my industry. And then I got this guy named Jed, and sure, he probably knows branding, but he doesn't know my industry. He doesn't know us guys and gals that are doing this thing. And if it wasn't for probably Scott Peterson saying, no, you need to use this guy, do it or else, is kind of the approach that Scott took in the kindest way possible. We just started down the path of working with Jed. And I'll tell you, the number one thing that I learned very, very quickly through the process was I was arrogant enough to think I knew what every other advisor was thinking. I assumed all you advisors that are listening to this think just like me. And while we have a lot of weird similarities, and you can almost pick an advisor out of the room, when you start getting around them, we are all incredibly different, and our needs and wants are different. And I had to learn to I had to learn to step back and realize I wasn't the voice for all advisors, but rather in marketing is to hear all those voices from all the advisors and then put that into a message that matters. And two huge key takeaways happened. As we did that, I realized we had it all wrong because I wasn't solving for the industry's problem. I was solving for Matt Walker's problems. And as soon as I could make that change in my mind, all of a sudden we were creating products that was solving the industry's problems and not Matt Walker's. And that was a big jump, big leap for me. And I won't even get into all the other things that we were able to do and accomplish, but that was like the big aha moment that happens through that transition there.
Yeah, Matt, I love it. Jed, you were just sharing the story of your running and the inception of this excitement and this invigoration and this, you still have your flats. I'm feeling and tasting that experience that you had. And then you said something that struck me. And you had a coach. And that word really stood out to me because you could have gone and run an 800. You could have ran as hard as you could every day, 2 laps for 5 years, and maybe you got better, maybe you didn't get better, but you had the wherewithal to hire a coach. This moment with Matt and me was a conscious decision for us to hire a coach, a consultant, a professional that knows something we don't know, that sees angles we don't see. And at first, that wall that we put up was the uninvitation, if you will, to have the coach come in. Once the wall was broken down, and every athlete that is listening to this right now knows, when you let the coach in, you may hate the coach because he makes you do things you don't want to do. But if you allow the process to percolate, if you allow the process to work over the long haul, over that long play, you will see massive success. So Jed, from your angle, what did you see as you started working with Swivel?
I really appreciated Matt's willingness to hear me out. I think that is a big compliment to you, Matt, as a leader, to be open to input and feedback and to be empathy minded. I think great brands are born out of empathy. Sometimes we are the customer. And even though we're very intimately familiar with the problems that the customers have like us, the humility that it takes to step back and consider there might be some additional insights to inform your strategy as you build a brand, I think that's a great credit to you. And the other thing that was impressive to me about our process and working together was we did not come up with the name for Swivel. It was a member of your team, and she's a very talented individual, Bailey. And I thought it was a huge compliment to you, Matt, that you were willing to let go of your initial thoughts. And even I had to let go of my initial preferences for a new name because Bailey came up with the better name. And the reason we knew it was better was because we had done the work and trusted the process of getting outside input to round out what we thought we knew, what you thought you knew, and what I thought I knew about the industry. Jared was very much a part of all of this process as well. And I remember working so hard to crack the code, to unlock the brand essence, to be able to connect with your community of customers and partners. And Swivel is such a great name on so many levels, but we wouldn't have gotten there had we been content to settle for our assumptions. If there's one thing I would want to share in our time together today is to challenge your assumptions, to reach beyond what you think you know about your customers and your audience and take the time to deeply understand and gain that first-hand knowledge of what resonates and why, so that you can tune your product and your message. A lot of people talk about product market fit. We specialize in message market fit, iteratively refining your messaging until you find what resonates by testing your assumptions, building a messaging prototype, presenting it to customers and partners, getting their feedback, revising it again and again until you find resonance. And you've achieved that both on the product side and the messaging side because you were open to empathy. And that starts with the leader.
Well, thank you. But the word of message market fit and product market fit, I had never heard of just as an advisor. Because we just don't talk about those things. And all of a sudden you get into a different business, the thing's different, works different, and you hear that being said over and over again. And what I started realizing I was doing is I was trying to take a product market fit and I was trying to force it because I didn't really truly understand the message market fit. And as soon as I realized the message market fit, what happened is the product modified and changed to meet that. So the product market fit and the message market fit aligned together. And as soon as you have that happening, that's where you start noticing things start taking off and things start picking up. And That was a huge eye opener for me. I think for advisors listening to that, you've worked with advisors and you've done rebranding for advisors as well, haven't? And walk me. So, quick question on that: when you work with advisors and you're talking about messages and marketing for them, what do you find is kind of the thing that holds most advisors back in the right messaging?
I think it's a great question from a messaging development standpoint. And I like what you said there about product market fit and message market fit informing one another. To me, they're like the double helix of a DNA strand.
Yeah.
You learn something more about the messaging and that informs the product. You learn something more about the product and you learn something more about the messaging. And so this process of refinement is iterative and it is fueled by curiosity. So the most curious advisors are the ones that end up having the best books of business because they take time to listen and defer judgment.
Let's talk about the timing of this, right? Because one of the things that I struggle horribly being patient, right? And speed is everything, right? Revenue, let's get there quick. Let's do this quick. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, surely this branding process must take a couple hours. So come on, Jed, let's go. Let's get started. It's not for the faint of heart, right? The questions and this pursuit and challenging the assumptions, it takes time. And initially, I didn't see, it's like anything. You started running the 800 meter, you didn't see the results in the first week. Actually, what you did was you felt pain, your legs were cramping, your feet hurt. I don't know. I was not crazy enough to run the 800. But in business, you feel that when you go through this branding process. There's initial pain and there's initial push through. And then you come around the fourth corner, or that last corner, and then you have that pivotal moment, the make it or break it, where am I going to subdue or submit, or am I going to persevere and push through? And after about 2 weeks of working together, I started seeing the gains and then the incremental gains. And it was slowly, suddenly. And that's how I would describe our relationship, was slowly. And then all of a sudden, when message fit and product fit came together, it was like it just took off. And we knew we had something special.
That specialness was in you. And we see our role at Backstory, you mentioned being the coach, as drawing out the greatness from our client partners and clarifying and articulating it in a way that resonates with them and their customers. Matt, you've worked so long and hard at developing your expertise in the financial services arena, and Jared in marketing, leadership, and operations. It would have been a shame to let something less than your greatness go to market. And that's something that you have to choose. You have to choose to be great. There's an inspirational metaphor we like to use at Backstory. I had the opportunity to go to Florence with my wife a couple of years ago, and as impressive as the David is, 17 feet tall, its proportions are perfect. You can't imagine that a human being created that beautiful piece of art, that sculpture. Lining the corridor leading up to the David are unfinished sculptures of Michelangelo's, and they call those the prisoners. And it's amazing the emotion you can feel coming out of these stones. It's an inanimate object. It's not alive, but somehow you feel like these people that are partly exposed are forever stuck because they didn't get the chance to be fully revealed. And we really believe in revealing the greatness in great brands and the people who lead them. That's our purpose at Backstory. But you have to have a willing participant. And I had to be willing to do the workouts to achieve my goal of going sub 2. And you had to be willing to do the work to reveal the greatness in you and your brand. So the work that's required is interdependent. The coach can't do it for you. You have to be willing to take their guidance. And that was what made our engagement so successful.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm sitting here seeing these statues just stuck in this cement, not able to move. And Jed, I remember a conversation that we had after we were talking about the name, and man, it took forever for us to figure this name out. We were just racking our brains. And I said, why not Advisor Branch, man? Like, come on, why not? And I'll never forget, he said this: Advisor Branch limits you. And he said that because Matt Walker, our CEO, his vision is so big. Just wait, you'll see it over the next few years. And he said, Jed, being him, said, don't waste the time limiting yourself when you should be expressing yourself. And I'll never forget that. And that just stuck with me. And it took a whole new meaning on this naming process. Oh man, this is a little bit bigger than just saying it's good, let's run fast.
You said it perfectly. I mean, that is I guess maybe I will add something. The concept of the advisor, and we said, well, some people identify as agents because they're, insurance type people. And we found as we built a product that is making things easy for financial professionals, we're making things easy for people. Finances is hard. Organization is hard. And we want to make that easy. And all of a sudden you now have a tool that can make it easy, and you don't realize how you're making it easy for lots of other people. And all of a sudden I started realizing I was completely limiting what we were doing. And it like I said, it was within me. It just had to be dragged out a little bit.
Yeah, the greatness was in there. And Michelangelo said he just revealed or removed anything that wasn't the angel, meaning the David.
Yeah.
And so we just had to remove anything that wasn't Swivel. And eventually we got to the core concept behind it. And I love the idea of making financial management easy, your purpose that we've talked about, and the way that you make it possible for all of your financial accounts to be visible in one view, whether it's insurance products or investment products. No one had ever taken that on because I think people had grown accustomed to thinking that's just the way things are. And when I had a year-end meeting with my financial advisor recently, and I watched him open up all the screens, and he expressed frustration. And I mentioned Swivel to him. He said, you've got to share that with me because I deal with this issue every day. And he's one of the best practitioners in our area. So if he's struggling with it, of course, everybody else is struggling with it. So you drew a good ride, as they say. It's a high-scoring bucking bronco to try to ride that out and tame that wild Mustang of a problem. So you were already committed to tackling it from a product development standpoint. There's an equal investment required of us when it comes to putting together the right brand presentation, positioning, messaging, and ultimately engagement and connection with customers. And doing both things well is what it takes to build breakthrough brands.
Yeah, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and Jed, you and I have touched on this before. I spent all this time with you as an expert in helping you with Swivel and getting that off and getting it going. And then all of a sudden, I know that you've worked with other financial professionals before in just their financial practices, accountants, financial planners, wealth managers, insurance agents. And so I know you know our industry as well. And the brand management and sending I'm curious to just know, walk us through your thoughts. Like, there's listeners here that are advisors. Like, what would you tell them on how they're, sharing? You see their brand everywhere you go, or you don't. Like, what works with that group? What doesn't work with that group? What advice would you give as a blanket advice for that group?
Such a good question. One example that comes to mind is a project we did for a financial advisory firm here in the Utah area where I'm based. And they had a previous name that was the acronym came from the names of the founders. And that's a typical pattern you see where people name their practices after themselves or the founding team. The challenge that was facing this particular firm was none of those founders, or maybe one of them, was still left with the firm. Huh. It was called LJ Cooper, and people would be introduced to the firm. They said, I'd like to talk to LJ. There was no LJ. There never was an LJ because that was one person's initial combined with another person's initial. And so they had outgrown the name. And their services and practice had exceeded the confines of that initial vision for what the practice was going to be and what it could do. And there was a next generation of leaders who wanted to participate, and it was hard to identify with a brand that was named for founders who are no longer there. So what do you do in a situation like that? Taking their goals into consideration, and after conducting a series of in-depth interviews combined with a brand audit, a competitive analysis, working through the brand discovery process like we did with Swivel, what we realized is there was a common unifying value that brought the people together who were running and leading this firm. And they were very purpose-driven. They believed that a money-based goal can always be moved. It's like you move the finish line. Speaking of track, you could always move that finish line once you reach a certain financial goal. If it's not attached to something of value that you value personally, if there's a greater purpose for the money, then you constantly change the goal, and it's not very satisfying because it's just a money-based objective. And there was a story and so many times these brand breakthroughs result from stories. And in this case, there was a story of a woman who was a client of LJ Cooper's. And Tim Whipple, one of the founders of the firm, he has a big heart. He also has a big brain. He's a super smart guy. And he, like you, seamlessly moves from one aspect of financial strategy to another and has a vast knowledge of all the products and services and strategies that are appropriate for different scenarios. But in this case, his client had a husband who her husband was ill and had been confined to a wheelchair. And he said, I promise you, you're going to have enough money for retirement that you've got to buy a van. You've got to buy it now so that your husband has the ability to get around and so you can transport him without hurting yourself or being limited in what you can do. Speaking of limitations. And so he essentially talked her into liquidating some of her investments so that she could afford to buy this van. And she was so relieved when she did it. That's just a micro example. There was another one where a woman wanted to start a 5K, and one of the partners at LJ Cooper inspired her to turn it into a marathon. And it was a recurring event that became a pillar in the community. There was a charitable cause associated with it. So they expanded her vision and grew it beyond what she thought she was capable of. And there were other stories like that. So we renamed the firm as part of their rebrand, First Purpose Wealth. They've since joined forces with Diversify, and they've continued to grow beyond the founding team. And the leadership team that I was working with has expanded their leadership capacity because they're trying to live into a bigger idea about helping people find and fund their purpose.
Wow.
It's a good name, but it's even more appropriate in the sense that that's truly who they are and what they're about. So like this DNA, double helix, product market fit, message market fit, you have to go to what's true to you and for you. Otherwise, it can feel like an arbitrary disguise. It's almost like you put on a costume and you try to get into character and pretend to be something you're not. Eventually that wears thin and people see through it. Yeah. So it's really important that you do something that's authentic. I think we hit bedrock with you, Matt, by doing the work.
Jed, so let's take a look now. So we have the agents and advisors that are sitting there, the LJ Coopers that have named themselves after themselves, and others that are just now listening to this saying, do I have the right brand? Do I have the right messaging? What can I start to ask myself? What can I be thinking of up here that may start leading me down the path of saying, hey, maybe I did get it wrong, or hey, maybe I got it right? What question should we be asking?
The first question to consider is, who are our ideal customers? Who would we love to serve and have more of? And it's not necessarily just a question of who has the most money to invest. There might be other considerations that would inform the answer to that question. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that a one-size-fits-all approach is good enough, and maybe it has gotten us to where we are. But if we really want to elevate our performance, getting clear about who our best customers are and what the common characteristics are that define those people and those groups is really helpful in figuring out whether or not you have the right brand. Something we've done as a part of our repeatable process for building great brands that break through is doing in-depth interviews. And that process, as you'll recall, began with you, both of you, curating a list of people to interview that you said to us, these are people who represent the ideal customers in different customer segments, partners who really understand and quote unquote get it. You knew who the people were. We did the work and we had some independent objectivity and credibility maybe to be able to ask things that might not have been comfortable for you to ask, to find out what resonated and why. And then we distilled that and synthesized it and presented it to you in an actionable set of messages, both at a company level, that's called brand messaging, and audience-specific messaging, so that you could have that top-of-funnel conversation when you're just doing the get-to-know-you part and getting down into the verticals that are specific to different audiences as the people progress through the buying journey and through the funnel. So getting clear about who your best customers are is a great place to start. I have a quick anecdote to share, and that is with the holiday season just around the corner, we're recording this in late November. Think about a time when you received a gift that really resonated, that made you feel appreciated and understood, a gift someone purchased for you. And let's think of times when maybe somebody gave you a gift that didn't make you feel special or appreciated. The reason for the gifts that do or don't feel validating is a lack of insight and understanding as to who we are. Great brands make great customers feel appreciated, understood, and valued. And that all stems from insight. Insight is an understanding of what someone wants and why. uncovering the why that is below the surface is the key that unlocks great relationships and builds great brands.
Jed, the follow-up question that you had with us to that was, let's niche down. What's your avatar? What's this perfect, exact, concise client customer look like? And then after we identified that, you said, what's the problem that you solve? And I think one of the challenges for me was I was trying to ask that question first. What's the problem we solve? And we were solving maybe the right problem for the wrong person, or maybe the wrong problem for the right person. I don't know, but we had it back, or at least I know I had it backwards in trying to solve that problem. Is that common? Do you see that? And how does this idea of a problem, solving the problem, really show itself in branding?
Matt, was there something you wanted to say a minute ago?
Well, yeah, because I think this is a great carry on to go next, but I definitely want to make a point to our advisors that are listening that it is scary to think that you have to have someone go ask questions on your behalf. It is also scary to wonder what they're going to say and if it's going to hurt. And this name you've had forever has got everyone in the community knows me by this name. How could you change it? If my name is wrong or my message is wrong, sure, let's change my message. But what if my name's wrong too? And all of a sudden, I just want you to know, that's frightening. And that's a big reason why I was like, look, I'm going to pay someone to change the name and cause all these problems. I do not want to do that. The best way I can describe the experience is from, as a client of Jed's and as someone that has had to do this to my business pruning is the best example of what it is. You're just being pruned. They're not cutting you down to a stump. They're trimming some things off. But if you don't trim things off, things get wily, it gets out of control, it doesn't look right. And so you got to take a little bit of pain, a little bit of cutback. But man, I'm telling you, it's not like, hey, a month from now, it's going to be better. Maybe not. But 6 months, we're not talking years to make things better. It's months. And all of a sudden, you've got the momentum, you've got the traction and everything else. So for listeners that are like, I think I might need, maybe my brand is a little bit off. Maybe my messaging is a little off. Or some of you are like me, if you've done it yourself, it's probably off. You probably messed it up. But, and that's okay, because you probably did what I did, which is you're going to make the decision for yourself because you know best, you know how you think, you know how you think your clients think. It is eye-opening to find out what other people think. And it is, you'll get probably most of it right, because if you're successful, it means you're doing some things right. But what are you missing? What's going to take you to that next level? If you hit your all-time goals this year, how do you stay there? These are the little things that make a big, big difference in going through things. And I would say this is probably a proof of concept from a company that's had to go up, down, and up as figuring things out. These changes are the things that allow you to go to the next level, because if not, you'll get stuck and your tree, your pruning never really takes off. It just kind of stays. You got to cut it back to go forward. So back to your question, Jared, because I just wanted to make that comment, because I feel like if our listeners are sitting there thinking that, I just wanted to give you some motivation to get past that fear, because that's the fear that was going through my head. And I think if I just knew, hey, it's not that you got it that wrong. It's just that you need to get pruned. And that's what we're doing here is we got to prune you a little bit, and you're going to grow bigger, better, and faster.
Well, and Matt, change is hard. I mean, change represents, you've got to redo some processes. You've got to change your thinking. Man, for Pete's sake, we had to change a logo. We had to change our colors. We had to change how we talk about what we do. We didn't even know how to talk about what we did until we really got down to brass tacks. And so this process is, man, I think of it, I'm going to keep going back to this race that you're running, Jed. You can either choose to keep your lungs constricted, or you can open the throttle. And when you choose to open the throttle, and I think that's that message market and that product market fit that we're talking about, when those things come together, Matt, in the last 6 months, what has happened for your business as a result of the pruning that happened a year ago?
We realized, and for some of our users, they know this, and from new people, you find this out too, that our system wasn't easy. It was robust, but it wasn't easy. And what we realized is the true message of what people wanted is they just wanted to make the financial management easy, is what they did. So we talked about a little bit before how our product market fit and message market fit have to align. Competitors made it doable, but they weren't making it easy. And we kind of ripped everything out in our system. And we just said, how do we make this easy? How do we make it look easy? How do we make it feel easy? How do we make it truly easy? And that took a lot of work. I mean, I have sketchbooks of just papers of how to make it easier. We had customers telling us what was hard and how to make it easier. And all the focus then became on that, and even innovation. So the innovation was one of the hardest things, and Jed had talked about this already, is you've got American Equity here, Allianz here, you got different Charles Schwab, Columbus Life, all these different companies that people use. And you're pulling documents from here, and then you're trying to put it in some spreadsheet, or you're trying to make sense of it. I mean, it's just complicated. Or I got someone calling me and I've got to go tell my staff, hey, update the paper so I know what I say before I go talk to that customer. And I'm like, it's got to be easy. We've got to be able to just gather all this data and just put it into one spot. So if that customer calls, I can click the button and I can see updated data from all those spots. And we went out and above and said, we got to invent this. It doesn't exist. We can't find it. We have to invent it. And we did. And we invented it. And we created that, the Swivel sync box. Some of our friends that use it, they call it a robot bastard. You have to talk to them on that name, but we call it Swivel Sync. And guess what? All of a sudden it starts pulling data, and all of a sudden things got a lot easier. And that's just one of so many ideas that we had to pull in, where the message of people just wanted financial management to become easier. And I was like, let's make it easy. What's hard? Ask them what's hard. What's hard in my life? We just start asking what's hard. What do we make easier? And then we solved that problem. And sometimes it was innovation with new technology. Sometimes it was the way things were written and flows had to be changed, but we made it easy.
And Matt, I want the listeners to understand something. When we started working with Jed, this is what I equated working with Jed. Working with Jed equals making more money, right? Jed equals revenue. And so, that's just what I thought. I'm like, okay, so he's going to change our message, change our logo, we're going to do all this stuff, and then we're going to hit play, and then we're going to make all this money right out of the gates. And what I realized was what Jed did, or what Jed does, is breeds innovation. And that innovation is the thing that opens that throttle. That innovation is the thing that allows us to have a highway of forward growth and forward progression. And I think of it like, you drive in California, they got 24 lanes, and then you come to Idaho and you have like one lane traffic. That's the difference between Advisor Branch and Swivel. And that's a gift that Jed has, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate Scott Peterson's introduction. I think Scott's a great example of someone who's abundant, and he recognized that there were things he could share and guide and coach, and there were things that I could contribute. So this has been a collaborative process.
Jed, tell me in just a few short words, what is the process that you take people through? Like, what is this before we ask how they can connect with you?
It starts with brand discovery. Who are we? What do we do? Why does it matter? What is our current perception? We talked about brands being the perception someone has, a customer has, of a particular person, place, thing, or idea. How do they perceive us today? How do we want to be perceived? That's P1, perception 1, P2, perception 2. A brand strategy defines the words, images, and experiences that close the gap between those two. This is our current perception. How do we get here? Once you've done the deep dive to understand the current perception, you build a brand foundation informed by the insights that come out of the brand discovery phase 1 work. That brand foundation includes your brand purpose, the difference you make beyond making money, your brand position, how you want customers to perceive you and the words you want to own in their minds, what you want to stand for in their minds, your brand promise, the overarching value you deliver to customers, and your brand pillars. What are our 5 biggest differentiators and benefits? Following that, you do your finishing polish stage and phase with brand personality. How does our brand look, sound, and feel? From there, we get into defining your audiences, your ideal customer profiles. What kinds of companies are you doing business with? Who are the people making decisions, or if they're just individuals, who are the customer personas who make the buying decision to use your services and to continue working with you? And then you articulate for those audiences and your offerings where they intersect. What is the value that your services provide, and how do you articulate that in a clear, concise, consistent way? You build out a messaging framework. From there, you complete your brand narrative, your 1-line elevator pitch, 1 paragraph about us statement, 1-page company overview, incorporating all of the elements I've already talked about that got you to that point in the process. And then you can look at refreshing your brand, meaning you're not going to change the name of the firm because it's still working for you, but you are going to update the story. You may refresh the logo, or you do a completely new name, which would be a rebrand. And then you take your story and your new visual brand identity to market in a consistent way. And we have a very simple assessment on our website that you can check out to determine what parts of your brand are defined, being defined, or not yet defined. And that can be a big help in paving the way forward on how you want to close the gap between your current and desired perception.
And that, my friends, is how you brand yourself in 30 seconds or less by Jed Morley. I love that. Boy, I was like sitting there listening. I'm like, we did all that? Wow, we did all that? And you know what you produce? You pumped this out at the end of this. He just spit some fire at us. What we got was a branding book. At the end of this project, he gives us like the Bible, right? And he just delivers it to you. And let me share with you the other aha I had. At the point that you have a branding book, completed branding book with everything that Jed just said, every partner that you work with, you can hand that book to them, whether it's social media consultant, marketing consultant, mail house, lead generation, anything. It doesn't matter. You give them the booklet and they are now armed with a scope versus a shotgun approach to how we can target the right person with the right message at the right time to give us the best chances and best results. And man, Jed, the blessing of all of this has been this booklet that you gave us.
That was a really fun culmination to this months-long process. And the clarity it provides results in alignment. And isn't alignment one of the hardest things to do when you're trying to scale?
Absolutely.
You might have been able to make a winning relationship work when it was just you and some associates, but when you start to really grow the team, how do you keep everybody aligned and focused on what matters most? And that's what that book is designed to do, is help other people quickly onboard and align and be on brand and on message so that you can achieve your full potential.
Jed, there's been a question that's just been sitting on the tip of my tongue for a while. Your inspiration that you've received, your desire to brand, but maybe more so is your desire to serve and help other people. Why is it so palpable? Why do you have this strong desire to serve and brand and help people?
To me, it's a faith-based response to that question. I believe that God intends for each of us to fill the measure of our creation. And when I see someone who's performing below their full potential, it inspires me to want to help them close the gap. And the vision Matt had for what Swivel has become wasn't being well served by the current expression of the brand. The name didn't communicate the full value. The logo wasn't right. And the story was off. So because I am interested in helping people live and fulfill the full measure of their creation, I saw the gap and bravely stepped into a space where I was sharing with Matt that I thought he could do something more. And I think if you come to that conversation with good intentions, people can feel that and sense that. At least I hope that's how it comes across. And it was a pleasure to partner with you, Matt, because I knew that you had greatness in you as it relates to this new venture. You'd already established your practice, so there's no question that you were skilled as a practitioner, but what could you do to amplify the impact of thousands of other advisors? That's when it gets even more interesting, because there's a scalability component to that. There's an impact that extends well beyond what you personally can affect in your sphere of influence. So that's what gets me excited, is when I see somebody that has the ability to make a bigger impact. And if I can help facilitate that, then I'm all in.
Jed, this is not a paid advertisement. It was an absolute pleasure working with you. It's been a game changer for me and for our business. How do other people contact you? How do other people get in touch with you so that they can experience the same thing that Matt and I have experienced in working with you?
Well, I appreciate your kind words. And without great clients, we can't do great work. So we appreciate your commitment to doing the work and to achieving great results. So thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure partnering with you on your project, and really respect your commitment to the highest standards of quality and excellence in everything you do. The best way to contact us is to reach out via my email, jed@backstorybranding.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can fill out that brand assessment and get your own personalized color-coded brand wheel that shows you where you're defined green, being defined yellow or not yet defined red. That's a complimentary assessment where you can see the baseline of where you are, and we can talk about how to get from there to here at your convenience. But we would love to have conversations with your community to see what greatness lies within them.
Wonderful. Well, Jed, thank you so much for your time today. And to all the listeners that are out there, advisor, agent, financial professionals alike, at some moment you made a decision to run your race. Jed's happened to be an 800 meter, but some are at the starting line, some are at the midway point, and some are on the home stretch. I'm going to challenge each of you to ask yourself some of the questions that Jed has presented today, to truly take a look at where your brand and where your messaging is at relative to the product and the customers and people that you want to be influencing in your life. And as a result, make the decisions to continue moving forward, to continue running your race. And my challenge to each of you is, as you round that fourth corner, do not submit, but choose to persevere and make it to your finish line with the right message and the right brand. We look forward to seeing all of you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow us on your preferred platform wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, success loves company, so share this podcast with someone who you think might enjoy it too, and let's build a community together. Let's keep the momentum going until the next episode drops. And hey, if you got any questions or topic ideas that you would like us to focus on, send us a message on social media. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.